What if everything we've been told about autoimmunity is wrong? I'm Elizabeth Yarnell. After awakening partially blind one morning in 1999, a doctor told me my multiple sclerosis would put me in a wheelchair within 10 years. I refused to accept that as the end of the story, so I started investigating. Welcome to the Inflammation Investigator, the podcast that uncovers the inflammation lurking underneath your ailments. Because autoimmune and chronic conditions should not be viewed as death knells when they are actually alarm bells. I'm a traditional naturopath and founder of the Inflammation Academy. And in 2 episodes every week, we dig into what conventional medicine might be missing. If you're living with chronic or unexplained symptoms, this investigation is for you. Your body has been trying to tell you something. Let's start listening. Hi, and welcome back to the Inflammation Investigator. Today, we are going to be talking about essential oils, all the stuff that you have never known about essential oils. We're going to touch on the vagus nerve. We're going to touch on inflammation, of course, and all ways that you've probably never even thought essential oils could make your life and your health better. So let me introduce you to Jodi Cohen. She is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, functional practitioner, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, where she combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wildcrafted essential oils. She has helped over 100,000 clients heal from brain-related challenges, including anxiety, insomnia, autoimmunity, and calming the fires of inflammation. She was recently recognized as one of the Enterprising Women of the Year. So welcome, Jodi.
Oh gosh, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I've been following your essential oil journey for so long, and I have a bunch of your essential oils because I just think they're so fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
But let's start with your story. How did you get here?
Necessity is the mother of invention. And it started actually with my second child. I had my first child, super easy kid. I just assumed I was this great mother. So I had another one 22 months later. Very different experience, kind of chronic ear infection, antibiotic, wound up having some gut related issues. And at a certain point, someone noticed that his personality changed when he ate something and suggested I take him to a nutritionist. And she said, my son was on Ritalin his whole life, and it turned out he was just allergic to weird foods. So I thought I can do that. And we changed his diet, and his entire personality changed. And so I became kind of a health crusader and started cooking everything I could that was organic. And I started using oils because no matter how many ways I tried to make kale, he really wouldn't eat it. And someone told me that you could use oils, even rubbing oils on their feet was getting plants into their system. So that was how it started. And I had a whole collection, and we used to rub them on his feet before bed. And then another stressor kind of popped up. His dad became kind of severely depressed to the point where I thought he might die on my watch. And so when I finally found him help outside of the home, once he was safe and I knew it wasn't my job to keep him alive, I kind of collapsed. I really hit the mat hard and was struggling to function, and suddenly I'm a single mom. Of course, I'm class parent, soccer mom. I'm working 2 jobs, and I will wake up with the kids, make them breakfast, pack their lunch, drive them to school, come back home and set the alarm for like 10 minutes before pickup. And that just wasn't sustainable. And so I was taking all of my nutritional knowledge. At that point, I had gone back to school to study nutrition and was helping other mothers. And I knew it was my adrenals, and nothing I was doing really seemed to make a difference. And then one day I went to yoga, and she was talking about the vagus nerve. And I knew enough about the vagus nerve and how, your nervous system is designed to keep you alive, right? And so it prioritizes survival, which means that if it perceives danger, it could be a lion chasing you down the street. There are not that many lions running around in Seattle. We have some mountain lions, but not regular lions. So it's often kind of emotional danger, anticipatory stress or past trauma that makes your body think that it's not safe. And when your body thinks that it's not safe, it shuts down everything that kind of is regenerative and restorative to your health, like your ability to not feel anxious, your ability to get restful sleep, your ability to anti-inflame, your ability to digest your food, to detoxify, to turn on your immune function. And as I was listening to her, it occurred to me, oh, that's so me. That's exactly what it is. And so I got home and I started researching, how do you activate your vagus nerve? So your vagus nerve is the gear shift between that fight or flight response, which is called the sympathetic response of your nervous system, and the rest to digest and heal parasympathetic response. And I came across a device that could stimulate your vagus nerve. It only requires you to get 2 surgeries and implant a battery operated thing behind your earlobe
Oh,
on your mastoid bone. And for some reason, that word stimulate kind of stood out to me because as I was rubbing oils on the bottom of my son's feet, some of them were very stimulatory. And what that meant, the bottom of the foot, by the way, is the best place to put any oils because even if they are stimulatory or hot, the skin is thicker there and it wouldn't bother you. But putting it on your hands to get it there, sometimes they would turn red, sometimes they would feel warm. And so it occurred to me, gosh, I wonder if I could use essential oils and just put them in that spot behind the earlobe on the mastoid bone to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And with nothing to lose, I'm like, why not? So I started playing. Clove is stimulatory, cinnamon is stimulatory, rosemary. And I would just see. And somehow I realized that the combination of clove and lime topically applied to the earlobe behind the mastoid bone was the secret sauce. When I did that, I would suddenly feel better. And if you've ever had those moments like, it could be that time of month where you feel really uncomfortable or you have a headache and you try something and all of a sudden the pain disappears and you feel better. You're like, okay, that was a win. That worked. And so I kept making things up that really helped me in my darkest hour of my darkest day. And we had a monthly like kind of get together with all of my friends that went through the nutritional therapy program. And we would kind of go around the table and talk about what we were doing. So I was telling them about these oils and I brought them with me and they were all like, oh my God, that's so weird. We totally have to try it. And so all my friends started using it and they were getting these incredible results because in clinical practice, some of the things that are really hard to do are kind of the emotional things. If somebody has anxiety or overwhelm, which impedes their ability to comply, they're so anxious or they just can't remember to do it. So they do nothing. If they're stuck in stress, they do nothing if they're not sleeping. And so these blends were really kind of hitting those hard to reach points. And they're like, this is amazing. You have to do something with this. And that was actually my background was kind of product research and product launches. So there was a Nutritional Therapy Association conference in March of 2013. And they convinced me, they're like, we'll help. You should be a vendor. At the time, it was like $200, So I made a banner and I put together like a practitioner kit. And I think the conference was going to draw like 300 people. So we put together 100 kits and we sold out in the first hour because everyone was kind of saying, we like the idea of oils, but we didn't really know what to do with them. And what we love is that you take the guesswork out. You tell us exactly how to use them and where to use them. And what's really interesting to me, if you think about, healing and how we get healing remedies into the body, the majority of the remedies go through the digestive channel. We either eat nutrient dense whole food or we ingest supplements, right? And one thing that has been a real challenge is that when the gut is inflamed, everything that you're ingesting is not necessarily digested, absorbed, and assimilated in optimal function. So, how else do you get things into the body? And what people forget is your nose, your nasal passageway goes directly to your brain. It is your fast pass to the brain. This is why cocaine is snorted through the nose mechanism of delivery is the fastest way to get things into the body, right? And we
Uh-huh.
totally discount that. We forget it. We're ingesting all this stuff that, maybe peed out or may actually get absorbed. And we forget that we can just smell. And the other thing that we forget is that our skin is our largest organ. And anything we apply on our skin, good or bad, often gets right into our system. So I feel like our largest opportunity for healing and getting healthy things into the body isn't really being taken advantage of.
That's such a great observation, and not one that I even hear in the world of essential oils that often. Um, when I was first taught about essential oils, I was always taught that you really needed to use a carrier oil with essential oils, that you shouldn't put them directly on the skin. But it sounds like that your essential oils are formulated to put directly on the skin. You don't
We
need
are, and we
to put an
and we do.
additional carrier oil.
Well, we dilute some of them, and like, let's be clear, it depends on the oil, right? Like
Uh-huh.
lavender and frankincense, you can put directly on the skin. Something that we call a hot oil, like oregano, why would you? You know, and it's really it does. I think that the world of essential oils, I almost feel like it's been typecast, right? It's kind of the dumb blonde of the healing remedies. It's perceived as
Right.
like this woohoo, hippy dippy thing. And all of the value and the benefit, kind of the juice of why it's so valuable, has been thrown out the window. And you're right, no one talks about it. They just kind of diminish it, or, it's seen as like this silly little accessory. And that's why, I wrote this book in 2020, essential oils to boost the brain and heal the body, to really put in the science and like, what are essential oils and why do they work? And essential oils are basically the concentrated essence of plants. And plants, most people forget, were the precursor to pharmaceutical drugs. White willow bark is now Valium or aspirin. Valerian root is now Valium. Like all of these healing constituents that we know about were available as plants and are available as plants. Most people think about, well, ginger, you get nausea, you can totally take peppermint tea or ginger and they help. And they don't really realize that they have the same healing constituents as most of the pharmaceutical drugs that we're taking, except they're just nature's version.
Yes, and they can't be patented in the
Yeah.
same way as the drugs, which is
Yeah.
a big reason why we have the drugs that have clinical trials versus essential oils, which are more or less available widely and don't make anybody enormous millions and billions of dollars like the drug companies. And so,
Well, and the other thing that's so interesting, some of the big companies, they're really focused on profit, right? So how do you make more profit? You get people to buy more of it. Well, how do you get people to buy more of it? You tell them to drink it or diffuse it 24/7. And I'm much more about the healing. You don't need to do that. Like I think it's so interesting with diffusing. I wouldn't do it around cats. Other animals are probably fine, or birds, but like smelling, just like if you've ever been to an all you can eat buffet, right? What happens? You
uh-huh.
get in, you're starving, you pile your plate with so much food, and maybe you eat like half of it. Like at a certain point, you're like, I'm full. I do not need to eat more. It's called satiety, right? Same thing happens with smell. You put something under your nose, it's usually between 3 to 7 breaths, and you stop smelling it. You don't need more. Why are you diffusing 24/7 if you only, if you don't need it? It's wasteful.
One of my favorite essential oils is eucalyptus. I feel like I use
Yeah.
eucalyptus every single winter for quite a few different reasons. And it was actually an essential oil when my kids were little and would have a cough, I would put the eucalyptus oil directly on the soles of their feet. And
Mhm.
it's amazing. It just stops the cough.
Oh, I
What
know.
are some, go ahead.
No, it was kind of a joke in our house. Like my son liked to, play sick, and he'd be like, "Oh, my throat," and I'm like, "Oh, I can fix that, buddy." And he it was like, damn, foiled again.
Yes. What are some of your other favorite essential oils that are used all the time that everybody really should have in their house?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest one's lavender is kind of an all-purpose one because you can do it for anything. It's actually great for sunburns. Lavender was kind of discovered. the story, which may or may not be true, is that some chemist accidentally burned themselves and thought they were dipping their hand in water and it was lavender oil. And it's great for burns. It makes burns go away really quickly. Frankincense is kind of fabulous for everything. My other favorite, rose blend. My latest obsession is this idea of kind of the subconscious mind and subconscious trauma. Like when you
Uh-huh.
think about what keeps you stuck in fight or flight, and what's really interesting, especially from an inflammatory perspective, it is the vagus nerve that triggers the release of acetylcholine, which is the anti-inflammatory neurotransmitter. So if your body feels like it's reacting to danger, if it's stuck in the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, it's really hard to anti-inflame. So what is keeping you stuck in fight or flight? It could be an actual physical danger. It could be physical pain. It could be something that is going on in your body, right? It could also be thought-driven, anticipatory stress. You're worried about a relationship or a financial situation or something that's going on. So you're in your head and your body can't really differentiate like actual danger between perceived danger. And then it
Mm.
could be, trauma. It could be the traumas that you kind of know you have, but you don't really feel like dealing with. Like when my son, who was the impetus for me starting this company, was killed in a car accident in 2018. He was 12. And after that, I kind of chose to be a workaholic. I stayed so busy that I didn't really need to feel. And I actively knew I was doing that. It was kind of my chosen survival mechanism because my surviving child was 14 and really needed me to show up. And I figured if I could just keep myself so busy that I didn't need to feel, I could stay functional. And it worked until it didn't. And then there's also kind of these suppressed traumas, the things that maybe happen when we're so young that we don't know how to integrate, the adverse childhood experiences that are running in the background. And what's really intriguing to me now that I'm finally at a place where I'm like, all right, I guess I get to like take it on and lean into all the unfinished business that I haven't really processed, including that stress. Uh, it's really hard to address the subconscious mind with conscious tools. Talk therapy really doesn't work on subconscious trauma, but you know what does? Essential oils, sound oils. So I've been playing with using oils primarily through the sense of smell to help kind of gently release that subconscious trauma that even though I'm not aware of it, it's there in the background and my nervous system picks it up and responds to it.
Wow. So what are the essential oils that are really good to releasing subconscious trauma?
A lot of it is, like I wrote a whole blog post about kind of different oils, like things that come from roots, things that come from citrus, things that come from flowers. It's a lot of the flower blends. So rose is actually the best. In fact, whenever someone loses someone, we have a rose blend. By blend, what I mean is it is rose and it's diluted with fractionally added coconut oil because rose is so wonderful and so outrageously expensive that I try to make it affordable. But this is what I send to everyone. There's a ton of research. Actually, I document it pretty thoroughly in my book about rose essential oil. There's actually a neuroscientist in Seattle named Linda Buck who was doing research on the olfactory receptors that pick up predator odor and respond to danger. And she took it one step further and looked at what actually kind of modulates that and cancels that out. And it turns out it's rose. The smell of rose almost turns off your fear response. It is the absolute best thing when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling shut down, when you're feeling stuck in grief. I just got an email this morning from a woman who lost a child 3 years ago. And I forget her exact wording, but she kind of went into detail about the experience of grief and how it, like, her heart is so heavy, it almost paralyzes her body. Like she can't even move. And and she can't talk about it, words fail. But when she leans into smell, it allows that moment of calm. And this was a really pivotal learning experience for me. So my son died on August 27th, 2018, and we had literally just gotten back from a big trip to Peru the day before. We went and hiked Machu Picchu. The house was a mess. He went whitewater rafting with his friends, but didn't actually make it to the whitewater rafting experience because there was an accident on the way there. And all these people show up at my house. My messy house, we're still a little jet lagged. I'm ordering pizza for my unexpected house guests while I'm trying to deal with my son dying. And they're running around telling my daughter, your mom's never going to be the same. And so they finally leave. She tells me this and she's like, Mom, you are all I have. Like, I need you to be the same. And she was right. I knew about adverse childhood experiences and how if you can have that one advocate, that one person that you can really count on, then you can maybe be okay no matter what happens to you. So I'm kind of thinking about this. She falls asleep. I think I fall asleep for a little bit. And then I woke up and I thought I was having a heart attack. It turns out it's called broken hearted syndrome. This is what happened. Carrie Fisher died, and then her mom, um, Debbie, passed away right
Reynolds.
after
Yeah.
Debbie Reynolds. Yeah, it's like the trauma and the grief. Your heart basically starts acting like you're having a heart attack. And so I'm like, oh God, what's this? And one of my favorite things about myself is I'm oddly practical in those moments when you kind of need to be practical. And so I'm in pain thinking like, do I need to call 911? What are my options? And then I remembered, I'm like, wait a minute, I feel like I remember that rose oil helps with this, and I kept all the oils in Max's room to put on the bottom of his feet. So I walked down the hall, like go into his bed and start basically bathing myself in rose oil. And it totally helped the brokenhearted syndrome. The heart attack symptoms went away immediately. And then I was kind of lying there and I'm like, this is really weird. Like, this is his room, just like kind of, grief is a really odd experience and it can be very, you're in shock and the disbelief and the denial and all those feelings. So it's kind of having, I was processing a lot at one moment and thinking about that. I'm never going to be the same. And then I had this weird idea like, okay, that may be true, but if I can just like be okay in certain moments. I'm like, it's weird because like obviously, um, you know, when I woke up this morning, my life was very different than what I'm going to wake up to tomorrow. And I don't really know how I'm going to do this, but in this moment, I'm okay. In this moment, I actually feel okay, even despite everything that's turbulent and upside down. And that my next thought was like, okay, if I can just have more moments of okay than moments of like sadness and despair, I can be okay. If I can just string together these moments of calm. And I'm like, all right, what did I do right? It must be the rose oil. And so that was really my, what I did. Because grief is so strange. It like blinds you, like you're fine. And then suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm unbearably sad. Like what happened? And it could be nothing. It could be honestly smell. You could smell something that reminded you of your loved one. It could be a thought. It's very unpredictable. But here's what is predictable. You can decide that in those moments you're going to like state shift and smell is a really great way to do that. And oils are really portable. You can carry them in your pocket. So that is what I did. I just started recognizing like I have no idea when I'm going to be blindsided by like overwhelming grief. And when that happens, my operating strategy is just to smell something else. And you can kind of train your brain. Like it's so fascinating to me. Everyone has that smell that transports them through time. Like for me, it's oddly blackberries. It reminds me of being a child. Like what is there something that you smell that you're like, oh God, I'm like back to that age?
I think vanilla is a big triggering scent for me.
Yeah. The other one, my mother is from Brooklyn and my grandparents like mothballs. For whatever time I smell
Oh,
mothballs, I like remember
camphor.
that. Yeah. Yeah, or like Drakkar, that cologne that people wore in
Oh,
the 90s
yes.
in college. Um, but it's just really interesting. So we know on kind of with every ounce of our body, it's that, full body knowing that smell can really move us from one state to another. And what I think we need to remember is that we can work with that, right? We can start creating these correlations in our body that smell equals safety. We can train ourselves to when I'm having that day or that moment or whatever it is, I can reach for something that I can smell and it can shift me to something else.
So I'm watching you and you are just holding the vial up of essential oil and you're just sniffing it. You don't normally just apply it somewhere? Like you don't put it
Sometimes
on
I
your,
do. No, sometimes I put it on my wrist. Actually, this is a really good kind of on the inside of the wrist is a really
uh-huh.
good hurt point. I also use essential oils and topically apply them over reflex points because I think that's a full body experience. You can it's so, like whatever you want to do, you can smell it, put it on your like palm and sniff it. I was just thinking because we're filming, this looks a little less odd on the camera.
I didn't know if there was any kind of strategy to where you might put it, like if you might
Yes.
like put some underneath your nose or behind your
Yeah.
ears.
Where you apply is almost more important than what you apply. And that's one of the core milestones of Vibrant Blue Oils, our company. We give you very, very specific instructions about where to apply it. And then we also say, trust your intuition, because early on, it was a lot of people that were chronically ill that were finding us, people with Lyme, people with autoimmunity, people with chronic illnesses. And we can talk a bit about how oils and certain oils to support like lymphatic drainage and fascia release are really wonderful if you're battling chronic illness. And what I found is that when people are that ill and they've been working so hard for so long, and maybe they feel like they've wasted their time, money, and energy, they get really anxious about, I don't want to do this wrong. I want to make sure that I get this right. And so for those people, I offer really specific protocols of this is exactly how you can do it. And then I also recognize that, some people that may be listening are also very intuitive and they have a good sense of like, this works for me. This is not working for me. Like the people in my yoga class that kind of make their own adventure. The instructor is guiding this and they do that and it works for them anyway. Like everyone gets to do what's best for you. But I feel like it's nice to have, suggested application strategies that you can then adhere to or slightly modify or completely do your own thing.
So are you saying there is no wrong way to apply
Correct.
essential oils or to use
Yes.
them?
Yeah,
And
I
there's
really,
no contraindications, like you can't, there's no side effects.
well, I mean, there are, okay. So there's this idea that the citrus oils, right? If they're pressed and not steam distilled, you don't necessarily want to, like, like if you've ever had like lemon juice on your hand and you go in the sun, you can get a really bad sunburn. So don't do that. Our oils, our citrus oils are all steam distilled, so they're not as photosensitive. I don't advise that people drink anything. Some people that are working on certain things, certain practitioners might have them ingest things, but work with someone if you want to do that. Don't just decide you're going to drink an insane amount of lavender.
Very good advice. So let's back up to what you were talking about how essential oils can trigger fascia release and can help move the lymphatic system. I love your newsletters, and you have done several newsletters on this exact topic. So let's talk about it a little bit. What can you tell us?
Yeah. So one of the main things, like I really think if I kind of look at what's happening in the world and why people aren't healing, why people are more chronically inflamed than they used to be, I think it
Hmm.
really has to do with them being stuck in stress, stuck in fight or flight. Their nervous system is activating danger, the sympathetic branch as opposed to the parasympathetic branch. And, I mentioned that I started this in 2013. In the past 13 years, back, in 2012, when I was saying vagus nerve, people were like, "You mean like Vegas, like Nevada?" I'm like, "No." It was a new vocabulary word, and people looked at me like I had three eyes, and didn't really get it. And now everyone talks about it. There are wonderful devices for stimulating your vagus nerve. But what I want to say now is that it's not, we are a full body terrain. The vagus nerve doesn't live in isolation. It starts at the base of the skull. It's the gut brain connection, right? So it starts at the back of the
Right.
skull, splits, is most accessible behind the earlobes on both sides, and then winds through every organ of digestion and detoxification. And there are many ways to stimulate it. It could be splashing freezing water on your face, deep breathing, one of these stimulation devices. But there are also other aspects at play that interact with the vagus nerve. For example, your lymphatic system, which is basically, it works with your circulatory system and it moves fluid in your body, and it's your waste system. And unlike your heart, it does not have a pump. And there are certain points where it can get very congested. There's some belief that like EMF and COVID and certain things have made lymph more congested. Some of my friends that are therapists that work with professional athletes. Once upon a time they were like, oh, it's just moving your body, moving your arms above your head and
Right,
that moves
right.
the lymph. And one of my friends said to me, it's not like these professional athletes are not moving. Like that is not the problem. And so the biggest point where lymph gets congested is the clavicles. 100% of the lymph flows through the clavicles. It's 75% on the left side. Wait a minute, I'm getting this wrong. 75% on the left and 25 on the right. But um, this is the big bottleneck. And so if your lymph is congested in your clavicles and then it's kind of backed up and congested in your neck, what's happening is that the congested lymph is compressing the vagus nerve. It's called either vagus nerve toxicity or vagus nerve infection hypothesis. And if you think about it, your mouth is kind of home to a lot of pathogens, right? What is the exit route for the pathogens in the mouth? It drains along the jawline, the trigeminal nerve, and then goes down the neck. And at this intersection, if the lymph is congested, the toxins just sit. And if the toxins are sitting there, the vagus nerve is pretty sensitive to toxin uptake, especially if it's heavy metals from amalgams in the mouth. And then that starts to impede the vagus nerve and its ability to signal. And so what a lot of practitioners that work on chronic illness have found is that if you're able to open lymphatic flow, especially around the neck. So we have a lymph blend that we teach people to topically apply. Step 1 is on the clavicles. And what's really interesting, I think that sometimes people are afraid of doing it wrong, so they do nothing, right? And it's like, you don't need to go run 5 miles, just put your sneakers on and like open the door. So what I've noticed with lymph, especially if you just teach people, roll it on. And then here's what's really interesting. They kind of can't help, they rub it in. So just that little action, if you do nothing else, you can't really do it wrong. It helps. And then you can roll it on the side of the neck and you can just help open up that channel. And we on our site have a whole lymphatic drainage, 5-minute lymph protocol. There are a couple other points that we recommend. And it's interesting. We talked about how we're both 57. You get this fun thing at 57 where, like the jowls and everything. This is the best natural facelift because a lot of that is just fluid that's stuck and not moving. If you can open up your clavicles and the side of the neck, you're really helping with fluid flow. And then your face looks thinner.
Without even Ozempic. That sounds fabulous.
Yeah, no,
So,
Ozempic.
so let's talk about fascia release because I feel like fascia release is having a moment. I think people
Yes.
didn't really understand what it used to be. Can you explain to the audience what is fascia? What is it? Why would you need to release it? And what helps?
Yeah. So most people just think of fascia as like the I can't talk, connective tissue that wraps around every organ, every muscle, every part of your body. And it is that. It's many things. But what's really interesting is it kind of can grip. Like if you think of like tech neck or, when my kids were little at swimming pools, I would like waddle around kind of huddled over, like don't die, don't drown. And then the blinker passes and you still, you have those hunched shoulders, you're bracing for impact. It's like the physical armor of the body. And what that means, it works in tandem with the nervous system and the lymphatics. Some people think of the nervous system as kind of the masculine and the fascial system as the feminine. But if it's, clenching or gripped or really bearing down, then that also impedes lymphatic flow and vagus nerve signaling. And there are some tools like, there are some lymph practitioners. I do think that red light therapy is great for fascia release. But what I found is that the fascia is not just the physical, it's also the emotional. It's kind of where all of our suppressed emotions hang out. Like one of my yoga instructors said, your hips, like basically as women, we're taught to be nice, we're taught to be accommodating, we're taught to be pleasers. So when we get angry, we don't let ourselves be angry, we like stuff it. And where do we stuff it? We put it in our pockets, so it hangs out in our hips. So all of our like suppressed anger is in our hips, and so that's why we have tight hips. So putting our fascia release blend, which is kind of designed to both enhance vasodilate, so support fluid movement, but also it has like some flower remedies like angelica in there to kind of gently release the stored emotions and it just gives more space. It gives space to allow for things to move, for things to be released. And one of the things that I play with often, this idea, people have trauma. Like there's this interesting book, Amy Griffin, she wrote The Tell, and she does MDMA and then remembers that she was sexually assaulted in her teen years. And then she decides to sue the guy, to like get depressed, to blow up relationships. Like nothing good comes once she knows about this. And so I remember reading that and thinking like there has to be a better way, like you don't need to re-traumatize yourself. You don't need to make things worse. Like almost like an emotional car wash. Like you're like, oh, look, that happened. Let's just like get rid of it as opposed to reactivating it. And what I found is that frequency tools like light, red light, like oils, smell, like sound, tuning forks, that's really the way to kind of transmute these really heavy, hard things. And it gives you, there's this idea of titration, right? So sometimes for us overachievers out there that are like, I'm going to deal with this emotion. And you like take it on. And then it's like, wait, whoa, too much, like adding pepper to your food. Ooh, too much seasoning. And so oils kind of, you were pointing out that I was smelling. Here's what's really fun and interesting. And I encourage anyone who's listening to do this at home, like try smelling something. It could be peel an orange, like the essential oils live in the peel of citrus fruits. Smell your coffee. I would be willing to bet you that you're not smelling it for like hours or even like more than 5 minutes. It's a quick thing. You get what you need and you move on. And what I think is really nice, because when I think about like helping people heal, we can all go to the doctor, right? Or to a lymphatic massage or fascial release massage or, to an appointment somewhere. It's like the dentist, we totally go to the dentist like one time a year, 2 times a year, depends what your gums are like. But and then you go home, and most of us brush our teeth at least twice a day, right? We have figured out our at-home care. And so what I really want to do is help people figure out their at-home care for the vagus nerve, for the lymphatics, for the fascia. You do whatever you do, and then you come home and, I try to make it easy. I'm like, sometimes, leave it by your toothbrush, like mirror it with another habit. You're already brushing your teeth twice a day. Just use your oils then, or leave it on your nightstand. Do it as a ritual before you go to bed. Let's just teach you how you can support your body, support your nervous system using your nose, which is the best technology for accessing your brain, and your skin, which, especially for lymph and fascia, these things live close to the surface. If you want to think about how do you actually get things into the body to support the lymph and the fascia, your skin is the fastest pathway.
Something I learned just recently about fascia, especially for women our age, in our mid to late 50s, is that the fascia can actually hold on to a lot of old estrogen.
Yes,
So
exactly.
as we're moving into menopause, that might be part of the reason why you might have a belly now. When you're thickening around the waist, that might be fascia holding on to estrogen and other toxins.
Yes.
So releasing that fascia can have so many benefits to your life.
It has been honestly the game changer for me with menopause. It changed everything. And I also think someone told me that, like we're women and estrogen is kind of like the bonding hormone. So, I remember Reese Witherspoon had this funny bit where she was talking about like her kid ordered something, at the restaurant and didn't like it. She's like, oh, take mine, and she couldn't even eat what he ordered. But that's who we are. We're like so accommodating, like we're pleasing. We let them do whatever they want. And then we get to middle age and the estrogen dies up and we become men. That's why, we like start making different choices. We're like, why was I putting up with that? Like, oh my goodness, like I can't do that anymore. And so it's really almost like a pruning time and a time to go, like shift everything in the body and let go of what is no longer working. And that is in the fascia. And that's a great way to release it and to support, like if you're estrogen dominance, the detox. It's also really interesting. Someone was telling me for GLP-1s, one of the practitioners that uses my oils, a lot of their clients are on the GLP-1s, and the GLP-1s work through the fascia. So they were telling me that if you apply the fascia oil before you use the GLP-1, it makes it work better.
Oh my gosh, what a great tip. I haven't even heard of that.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I know we're going to have to wrap this up shortly, so I want to ask you kind of what I always ask the final question. Is there anything else that you would like to tell people who are listening that you think everyone should know about essential oils that maybe we either haven't gotten to or that you want to emphasize?
I mean, the thing that I really would like to emphasize is just how it can impact your mood. I joke about there are times when you're driving and someone cuts you off and you're like, oh, whatever, like I hope they get there safely. You really don't care. And the next day it can be the exact same situation. And four-letter words are tumbling out of your mouth. And the only variable in that situation is you and your emotional regulation and resilience in that moment. And so what I'd like to share, I mentioned that my son died, and sometimes when hard things happen, if I can know that somebody else survived something like that or worse, I'm like, if someone else can do it, I can do it, right? So I went into reading all these biographies, including Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And for those of you who don't know, he survived the Holocaust. And so I was really curious, like, what did he do right? And one of the lines that really stayed with me is this idea that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And what that meant to me is that no matter what is happening in the outside world, you can control your response. And the way I have figured out how to do that is to stimulate the vagus nerve with our parasympathetic blend, which is clove and lime. And what that does, when your body perceives danger, it's almost like you're looking through, a telephone book and you're looking for danger and you're highly reactive. When you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system, you're far less reactive. You're more able to like clearly assess and respond. And that has changed everything in my life because I don't get, things happen, right? Your flight gets canceled. Your kid like breaks something, it's just like no one escapes. Stuff is going to happen. And if you're able to roll with it more and just see the positive in it, you're going to have a much better life experience. And so I feel like you can use oils and your sense of smell to really accentuate the positive.
Yes, I think that is the best advice anybody can ever have or receive, that your life is how you respond to things, and you have that choice. You can choose how you respond to events that are happening in your life or people in your life. That's always part of your choice. And I love that essential oils can help you with that. Tell us where we can find you. Where can people find you? What's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, the company is Vibrant Blue Oils. That is where we are on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And if you would like more information about the science behind essential oils, my book is Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. And that is available everywhere books are sold.
Fantastic. Jodi, thank you so much for coming on today. This was so fun. I know we could do like 3 more hours together. So I hope we have the chance to do that again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's another case filed on the Inflammation Investigator. Remember, every symptom is your body's way of communicating. We just need to learn the language. If today's episode sparked something for you, I want to hear about it. Share your own investigation discoveries with me on social media at Elizabeth Yarnell, or find me at elizabethyarnell.com. Your experience could be exactly what another listener needs to hear. And make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And here's the thing about investigations: they work best when you're not going it alone. If this podcast is helping you uncover the answers you've been searching for, please like, rate, subscribe, and review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. As a new podcast, these actions mean more than you know. Want to dive deeper into your own inflammation investigation? Head over to inflammationinvestigator.com, where you can take my free inflammation quiz to uncover which hidden triggers might be affecting your health. Until next time, this is Elizabeth Yarnell, your inflammation investigator, reminding you that the solutions to your health issues are out there. Let's find them together.